It's a Tuesday morning. You're standing in front of the open refrigerator, still half asleep, and you reach for the yellow tub. The toast is already up. You spread it, you eat it, you go to work. Nothing happens. Nothing ever happens. But here's the thing. That tub in your hand in the United States cannot legally be called butter. Not because someone's hiding it. Because the law says so, in plain English, in a statute signed in 1923. 80% milk fat. Below that number, whatever's inside stops being butter and becomes something else with a different legal name. So what exactly have you been eating? And why does the front of the package work so hard to keep you from asking? If you like knowing exactly what you're buying before you pay for it, subscribe. This channel reads the fine print so your pantry doesn't lie to you. And stay to the end, because the strangest butter story on record involves a peat bog and a man with a shovel. Let's start with how big this actually is, because the number surprised me. According to USDA Economic Research Service data, Americans ate roughly 6.5 pounds of butter per person in recent years. That's the highest it's been since the 1960s. Margarine went the other direction and fell off a cliff, from around 11 pounds a person in the 1970s down to well under 2. Butter won. Except it didn't, not really, because the shelf space that margarine gave up didn't go back to butter. It went to a third thing. A category with no fixed legal identity at all. Walk the dairy case and count. You'll find sticks in foil. You'll find tubs. And in between you'll find the confusing middle, packages that use the word butter as an adjective, a mood, a suggestion. Buttery, butter taste, made with butter, butter blend. And that's where most people get it wrong. And I mean most people, including me for about 15 years. Here's the honest part. There's nothing illegal about any of this. Every product I'm about to describe declares itself accurately on its own label. The problem is that the accurate declaration lives on the back in 6-point type, and the emotional promise lives on the front in gold foil. Take a real example. Land O'Lakes sells a product called butter with canola oil. According to its own packaging, that is exactly what it is. Butter plus canola oil sold as a spread, not as butter. Perfectly legal, perfectly labeled. But go into 100 kitchens and ask what's in the tub, and a lot of people will tell you that's my butter. It isn't. It's a blend, and the fat mix inside it is not the fat mix in a stick. Or take I can't believe it's not butter. The brand name is doing something remarkable if you stop and look at it. It's a legal shield and a marketing hook in one sentence. It tells you plainly that this is not butter, while planting the word butter in your head 3 times before breakfast. The label itself describes it as a vegetable oil spread. Country Crock, according to its own packaging, is also a vegetable oil spread. These are not accusations. These are the words the manufacturers chose, printed on their own containers. So why does the confusion survive? Because of shape and color. This is the part nobody talks about. Butter is yellow because of beta-carotene that cows pull out of green forage and deposit in their milk fat. That's why butter from pasture-fed herds in spring is deeper gold than butter from winter feeding. Manufacturers of alternatives learned early that if you make a product that same yellow and press it into that same rectangular stick, the human brain files it under butter and stops reading. The stick shape itself is an American accident, by the way. The quarter-pound stick in a wax wrapper became standard in the early 20th century because it fit the butter dishes and the recipe measurements people already had. Elgin, Illinois, and the surrounding dairy region were so central to the trade that the east and west stick shapes still differ slightly in dimensions today. So you have a category where the visual language, the shape, the color and half the vocabulary are shared, and only one narrow legal line separates them. That line is a number, and that number is where we're going next. Okay, the number. In the United States, butter is defined not by the Food and Drug Administration, but by an act of Congress. March 4, 1923. It sits today in the United States Code at 21 USC 321A, and it's short enough to read on a coffee break. Butter is the food made from milk or cream, or both, with or without common salt, with or without additional coloring matter, and containing not less than 80% by weight of milk fat. 80%, not a guideline, a statutory floor. What fills the other 20? Water mostly up to about 16%, plus milk solids that aren't fat and salt if it's salted butter. That's it. That's the whole recipe the law allows. Now, margarine has its own standard, And this is the part people never realize. Under 21 CFR 166.11, margarine or oleomargarine also has to contain not less than 80% fat. Same floor. Real margarine and real butter are both 80% fat products. Margarine must also contain vitamin A at not less than 15,000 international units per pound. That vitamin, a requirement, exists because margarine was designed as a butter substitute, and regulators wanted the nutritional gap closed. So if margarine is 80% fat, what is that soft tub in your fridge? It's below the line, and here's the loophole that reshaped an entire aisle. If a product drops under 80% fat, it can no longer legally be called margarine either. In the United States, there is no standard of identity for the thing it becomes. So the industry invented names: spread, vegetable oil spread, buttery spread. Those phrases are descriptive marketing terms, not defined legal categories. Which means the manufacturer chooses the words, and the only hard rule is that they must not be false or misleading. Europe did the opposite. Instead of leaving the space blank, the European Union filled it with a legal ladder. Under Regulation 1308/2013, Annex VII, butter is milk fat of 80 to 90%, with a maximum 16% water and a maximum 2% non-fat milk solids. Then, 3/4 fat butter at 60 to 62%, half-fat butter at 39 to 41%. And anything else in the range is a dairy spread that must print its exact fat percentage in the name. In Europe, a tub has to confess its own number. In America, it can call itself buttery and stop there. Codex Alimentarius, the international reference standard used in trade, lands in the same place as the US and EU. Standard 279 sets butter at a minimum 80% milk fat, maximum 16% water, maximum 2% milk solids not fat. Canada's Food and Drug Regulations set butter at a minimum of 80% milk fat as well. India's Food Authority, FSSAI, requires butter to carry not less than 80% milk fat and not more than 16% moisture. 4 continents, 1 number. A few more legal words worth knowing. Sweet cream butter means the cream wasn't soured before churning. It does not mean sugar. Cultured butter means live cultures fermented the cream first, which builds diacetyl, the compound that reads to your nose as intensely buttery. European style usually signals a higher fat, often 82 to 86%. But in the United States, that phrase is not legally defined, so the number on the nutrition panel matters more than the phrase on the front. And the grades. USDA grade AA, A and B are quality scores from a voluntary grading program run by the Agricultural Marketing Service. AA is a score of 93. Grade B butter is usually made from sour cream and typically goes to industrial use. Voluntary, remember that word. Now the history, because none of these rules appeared out of goodwill. Every one of them was carved out of a fight. It starts in France, 1869. Emperor Napoleon III wanted a cheap, stable fat for the army and the working poor, and a chemist named Hippolyte Miegemurries produced one. He churned beef fat with milk and water and called it oleomargarine, borrowing from margaric acid, which had been named for the Greek word for pearl because of the fat's shimmer. He patented it. He also, by most accounts, made very little money from it. The technology crossed the Atlantic within a few years, and American processors, sitting on mountains of cheap slaughterhouse fat, scaled it fast. The dairy states went to war. In 1886, Congress passed the Oleomargarine Act, which slapped a tax of 2 cents a pound on margarine and required manufacturers, wholesalers, and retailers to buy federal licenses. That is a tax law being used as a weapon against a competing food. It's one of the earliest examples in American history of the federal government regulating a food product by identity. It got stranger. Several states decided that if margarine wanted to look like butter, it should be made to look like nothing at all. New Hampshire, Vermont, West Virginia, and others passed laws requiring margarine sold in the state to be dyed pink. Pink butter on pink toast. The idea was that no one would buy it. In 1898, the Supreme Court struck down New Hampshire's version in Collins v. New Hampshire, holding that requiring a product to be made unsaleable was effectively a prohibition dressed up as regulation. So Congress went back and sharpened the knife. The 1902 amendment raised the tax on artificially colored margarine to 10 cents a pound, while dropping it to a quarter-cent for uncolored margarine. The result was a generation of American households buying a white brick with a little capsule of yellow dye in the package and kneading the color in at the kitchen table by hand. Millions of people did this. Ask anyone born before 1950, and there's a decent chance they remember the bag and the orange bead. The federal color tax finally died with the Margarine Act of 1950, effective in 1951. States held out longer. Wisconsin, the dairy state, kept its ban on yellow margarine until 1967, which produced a genuinely documented smuggling economy of people driving across the Illinois line with trunks full of colored margarine. Then the science flipped the argument upside down. For most of the 20th century, margarine was sold as the heart-healthy choice because it avoided animal fat. To make liquid vegetable oil solid, manufacturers used partial hydrogenation, and partial hydrogenation creates industrial trans fatty acids. Research through the 1990s, including the work published from the Harvard School of Public Health, tied trans fat intake to raised LDL and lowered HDL. Denmark acted first, capping industrially produced trans fat at 2% of fats in a food in 2003. The United States required trans fat on nutrition labels starting January 1, 2006. Then, in June 2015, the FDA determined that partially hydrogenated oils are no longer generally recognized as safe, with a main compliance date of June 18, 2018. That single ruling rebuilt the spreads aisle. The hydrogenation era ended, and the palm oil and interesterified fat era began. Dairy had its own reckonings. In 2008, the melamine adulteration of milk in China sickened an estimated 300,000 people and killed 6 infants, and it forced dairy supply chain testing standards to be rewritten across Asia and beyond. In 2011, Norway ran out of butter almost entirely, a shortage documented as the Smørkrise, driven by a wet summer, reduced production, and a sudden national appetite for high-fat diets. Prices for smuggled Danish butter got absurd. Rules follow damage every time. Right? Practical. Here's how to stand in the aisle and settle the question in about 11 seconds without trusting a single word on the front of the box. Rule 1. Ignore the front entirely. Every adjective on the front is a marketing decision. The back is a legal document, flip it. Rule 2. Do the fat math yourself. This is the single most useful trick in this whole video. Find the serving size in grams and find the total fat in grams. Divide fat by serving size. Real butter in the United States uses a 14-gram serving, 1 tablespoon, and the panel will say 11 grams of fat. 11 divided by 14 is 79%, which rounds to the legal 80. Now pick up a tub. Same 14-gram serving. If the panel says 8 grams of fat, you're holding a 57% fat product. If it says 5, you're at 36%. You just measured the thing the front of the package refused to tell you, using arithmetic you learned at 9 years old. Rule 3. Read the first ingredient. Butter's ingredient list is short enough to read out loud in one breath: cream and salt if it's salted, sometimes natural flavor, sometimes annatto or beta-carotene for color, which is legal under the 1923 statute and doesn't change what it is. If the first ingredient on any tub is water, you are buying an emulsion built around water, and water is the cheapest ingredient in any factory on Earth. Rule 4. Look for the emulsifier signature. Mono and diglycerides, soy lecithin, polysorbate. These are what hold water and oil together in a spread. Butter doesn't need them because churning does that job mechanically. Their presence isn't dangerous, but it's a fingerprint. It tells you the product was assembled rather than churned. Rule 5. Understand the zero trans fat trick. Under United States labeling rules, a manufacturer may declare 0 grams of trans fat per serving if the amount is below 0.5 grams per serving. Combine that with a small serving size, and a product can carry small amounts and still print a 0. Since the 2018 partially hydrogenated oil deadline, this matters far less than it did. But the rule still exists, so if you see partially hydrogenated anything in an ingredient list on an imported or old stock package, believe the ingredient list over the number. Rule 6. Watch the vocabulary tiers. Butter is defined, margarine is defined, spread is not, blend is not. Buttery is not. Butter flavored is not. Made with real butter tells you butter is present. It tells you nothing about the proportion. If the front says made with and the back doesn't put butter or cream in the first two ingredients, you have your answer. Rule 7. Check the net weight, not the box size. Packages in this aisle are sold by weight, and tubs of different brands sit in the same footprint at 14, 15, and 16 ounces. Compare price per ounce always, and compare it against fat percentage. A cheap tub that's 40% fat and half water is not cheap at all once you price the fat. Rule 8. If you cook, look for the fat number specifically. Higher fat butters, often labeled European style at 82 to 86%, contain less water, and less water means laminated pastry that shatters instead of steams. That isn't marketing, it's physics. And Rule 9, which costs nothing. Buy 1 stick of plain butter and 1 tub of your usual spread, put them side by side on a warm plate for 20 minutes, and watch. Butter softens and eventually separates into clear fat and milky liquid. A stabilized spread mostly holds its shape. You've just watched the emulsifiers work. Now here's the strange part. In June 2016, a turf cutter named Jack Conway was working in Log Bog in County Meath, Ireland, about 12 feet down in the peat, and his blade hit something soft. What he pulled out was a pale, waxy lump weighing roughly 10 kilograms. No container, no wrapper, just a mass of fat sitting in a bog, and according to the Cavan County Museum, which took it in, and the archaeologists who examined it, it was around 2,000 years old. It was butter, actual dairy butter, buried in the Iron Age, still recognizably itself when it came out of the ground in the 21st century. This is not a one-off. Irish and Scottish bogs have produced hundreds of these finds over the last 2 centuries, some in wooden kegs, some wrapped in bark, some in animal skin. The National Museum of Ireland holds a substantial collection. Chemical analysis of various specimens over the years has shown some are dairy fat and some are animal tallow, which tells you people were burying both. Why would anyone bury butter? There are 2 documented lines of argument and they don't fully agree, so I'll give you both plainly. One holds that it was preservation and storage. A peat bog is cold, acidic, low in oxygen and low in microbial activity, which is close to a natural refrigerator. Butter placed there could survive a season, and in a society where fat was wealth, a buried keg was a bank account. The other holds that at least some deposits were offerings, given the number found at boundaries between territories and the fact that many were clearly never retrieved. Museum curators often say the honest answer is probably both, depending on the case. Either way, the lesson sitting in that bog is the one this entire video is circling. Butter is chemically simple. Fat, a little water, a little protein. Keep oxygen, light, heat, and microbes away from it and it becomes almost inert. The thing that spoils butter isn't butter, it's everything around butter. The modern strange case runs the other direction, and it's about the word itself. In 2019, the California Department of Food and Agriculture told Miyoko's Creamery, a company making plant-based products from cultured cashew and coconut fat, that it could not use terms like butter, lactose-free, cruelty-free, or hormone-free on its packaging, on the grounds that butter is a legally defined dairy term. Miyoko sued. In August 2021, Judge Richard Seaborg of the United States District Court for the Northern District of California ruled largely in the company's favor, finding that the state's restrictions on the word butter in that context ran into First Amendment protection for commercial speech, because the labeling was not shown to be misleading when the plant-based nature of the product was clearly disclosed. So here's where we actually are. A statute from 1923 says butter means 80% milk fat. A federal court in 2021 said a company may nonetheless use the word on a clearly labeled plant-based product. Both things are true at the same time, in the same country. Europe went a different way entirely. In 2017, the Court of Justice of the European Union ruled in the Tofu Town case that purely plant-based products generally cannot use dairy designations, with limited listed exceptions. 2 courts, 2 continents, opposite conclusions about one word. Which means the only thing you can genuinely rely on is not the noun on the front. It's the fat percentage and the ingredient list on the back. That's the whole game, and it's why we did the arithmetic. Let's talk money, because every strange thing in this aisle is a cost decision wearing a costume. Start with the raw arithmetic of butter. It takes roughly 20 to 22 pounds of whole milk to produce 1 pound of butter, depending on the butterfat of the herd. That's the whole story of why butter costs what it does. You are buying the concentrated fat of an animal that had to be fed, housed, milked twice a day, and kept healthy for years. Nothing about that is cheap, and nothing about it scales quickly, because you cannot ask a cow to work a second shift. Butterfat also trades as a commodity. The CME cash butter market sets a benchmark price that moves week to week, and it has been genuinely volatile. It has swung from around $1.50 a pound in soft years to above $3 a pound in tight ones. When butter runs above $3, every food manufacturer that uses fat starts running the numbers on alternatives, and the alternative is almost always vegetable oil, because a metric ton of palm or soybean oil is a fraction of the cost of the equivalent milk fat. Now here's what actually changes inside the tub when the accountant wins. First, water goes up. Water is free. If you can hold 40 or 50% water in a stable emulsion and still sell it by the ounce at a similar price, your margin transforms. That's the fundamental economics of the low-fat spread. You are paying for water that has been engineered not to leak. Second, emulsifiers and stabilizers appear. To hold that much water against that much oil, you need mono and diglycerides, lecithin, sometimes gums. To keep mold out of a high water product, you need a preservative, commonly potassium sorbate. Butter at 16% water doesn't need any of that, because there isn't enough free water for microbes to party in. Third, flavor has to be rebuilt. Butter's aroma comes largely from short-chain fatty acids like butyric acid and from diacetyl produced by cultures. Strip the milk fat out and the flavor leaves with it, so it comes back in as natural flavor on the ingredient line. That's a legal and common practice, and it's declared. It's just worth knowing that the taste is being reconstructed rather than produced. Fourth, color has to be added. Beta-carotene or annatto, doing the job that pasture used to do. Fifth, the fat itself changed identity twice in one generation. Before 2018 in the United States, it was largely partially hydrogenated oil. After the FDA's ruling, the industry moved to palm oil, palm kernel oil, fully hydrogenated oils and enterified blends, because those are solid at room temperature without producing industrial trans fat. That shift is the reason palm oil turns up in so many spread ingredient lists today. It's a regulatory consequence, not a coincidence. And then there's the quiet one, package weight. Butter in the US is sold in a 1 pound, 16-ounce standard that has barely moved in a century. Tubs are not standardized. 15 ounces, 14 ounces, 13 ounces, sitting in containers of nearly identical size. Look at the little unit price on the shelf tag rather than the number on the front, and then adjust again for fat percentage, and the cheap option often stops being cheap. One more on the butter side. Grade B butter, made from sour cream and lower on the quality score, exists and mostly goes into industrial baking and processed foods rather than retail packs. And blended products, butter mixed with canola or olive oil, genuinely do exist for a functional reason. Oil lowers the melting point so the product spreads straight from the fridge. That is a real benefit. It's just a benefit with a fat percentage attached, and the label will tell you what it is if you ask it. So what should actually be in your kitchen? Here's how I'd build it, and this is where the prepper logic and the consumer logic finally shake hands. Tier 1, the working fat. Buy plain butter. Ingredient list: cream, salt. Salted keeps longer than unsalted because salt lowers water activity and slows microbial growth. Unsalted gives you control in baking. If you only want one, buy salted for the counter and the pan and keep a stick of unsalted in the freezer for baking days. Storage using the USDA's own Food Keeper guidance. Butter in the refrigerator holds quality for about 1 to 2 months. In the freezer, roughly 6 to 9 months for best quality, and it stays safe indefinitely below 0 Fahrenheit as long as it stays frozen. The failure mode in a freezer isn't bacteria, it's absorption. Butter is fat, and fat is a sponge for odor. If you freeze it undressed next to fish and onions, in 3 months you will have fish-flavored butter and you will not be able to fix it. Double wrap, foil, then a freezer bag with the air pressed out, then label the date. On the counter, Salted butter in a covered dish out of sunlight in a cool kitchen is a practice with centuries behind it, and a French butter crock with a water seal works because it physically blocks oxygen. But be honest about your kitchen temperature. In a hot room, butter goes rancid faster than anyone expects, and rancidity is oxidation, not spoilage bacteria, so it won't necessarily look wrong. Keep out only what you'll use in a couple of days. Learn what rancid smells like once, deliberately. It's sharp, a bit like old cheese and chalk and crayons all at once, and that's largely butyric acid released as the fat breaks down. Once you know it, you'll never serve it to anyone again. Tier 2, the long-term fat. This is where butter beats almost every other fat in the pantry because you can transform it. Clarified butter and its longer cooked Indian cousin ghee is butter with the water and the milk solids removed. You melt it gently, skim the foam, and pour off the clear gold, leaving the milky sediment behind. What you have left is essentially pure milk fat. No water for microbes. No milk protein to brown or spoil. Sealed in a clean jar, away from light, ghee keeps for many months at room temperature, and its smoke point climbs to roughly 250 degrees Celsius, far above whole butter, which starts burning around 150 because of those milk solids. Canned butter exists too and is a real commercial product, not a novelty. Red Feather, packed in New Zealand, is the best known example, sold shelf-stable in sealed cans. Read the label and check the storage instructions the manufacturer prints, and rotate it like anything else. Tier 3, honesty about spreads. If someone in your house needs a soft, low-fat spread for medical or texture reasons, buy it deliberately, read the fat percentage, and know you're buying it for spreadability rather than for cooking. Low-fat spreads with high water content behave badly in a hot pan. They spit, they steam, and they don't brown because you're trying to fry water. And the rotation rule, which is the whole pantry philosophy in one line. Buy what you already eat, store it correctly, and use it in order. A freezer full of butter you bought on sale in November and forgot about is not a supply. It's a slow loss. 1 pound blocks dated in marker oldest at the front. That's it. That's the system. Here's what stays with me. Nobody lied to you. The 1923 statute is public. The fat percentage is on the panel. The ingredient list is right there under your thumb. Every fact in this video came from a law, a label, a court ruling, or a museum. The gap was never between truth and falsehood. It was between what's printed on the front and what's printed on the back, and the assumption that you'd never turn the package around. Now you will. 11 seconds, 1 division, and you know exactly what you're holding. If this was useful, subscribe, because we take one product apart like this every week, using nothing but public documents and real labels. And tell me in the comments which subject you want next. Olive oil grades, honey, maple syrup, canned tuna, whatever's in your cupboard that you've never actually questioned. I'll read every one.